This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to downrigger@montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Hello everyone, Downrigger Dale here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, and we are today continuing our series on how to find the right boat for you. If you've been listening to this podcast a little bit, you know that we've been rounding up different experts from all across the state of Montana and even beyond. We've talked to folks in Minnesota and that as well. So we're continuing that series, and we found a great expert. I think that's going to give you I know he will give you some great information, whether you're deciding you want to get a boat just for fishing, or if you want something that's going to kind of accommodate the whole family. Dave Juvik is with us. He is with Townsend Marine. Now, Townsend Marine obviously is in the town of Townsend, right near the Canyon Ferry Reservoir, and, well, really just kind of in the heart of the state where you can find all kinds of things. And Dave's been doing this a long time. Of course, also with me on the podcast is the captain of the Montana Outdoor Radio Show. Captain, how are you today?
Real good. Looking forward to talking to Dave about Townsend Marine and talking about President's Awards, talking about Lund, which is, when you say fishing, and you usually say Lund because that's where a lot of anglers sit in a Lund fishing boat.
Yeah, one of the boats you're going to see out when you're out fishing in Montana, you're going to see a lot of Lunds. Well, we're going to talk to one of the experts on that as well. Dave, thanks so much for coming on the podcast with us. How are things in Townsend, Montana today?
Well, a little snowy today, but thanks for the introduction, and I'll do my best to prove it right here.
Great. Dave, could you just give us a little background on yourself here before we get too deep into it? How long you've been doing in the business and kind of what attracted you to the boating business in Montana?
Yeah, you bet. So I've worked at Townsend Marine for 22 plus years. As Mark might remember, I started out in the shop and then was the service manager here for a better part of a decade. Then in 2008, I began selling. Prior to that, I've always been a boat guy, whether fishing or hunting or even playing. I've always just loved to do it by boat. I think that my service background is unique in the fact that I'm very knowledgeable when it comes to helping the customer make an informed decision. Better yet, I don't promise things that are impossible for the shop to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Dave, one of the things that why you are certainly qualified as an expert here on our show is, and what we did, folks that are listening here, what we did is we tried to find people that aren't just in the business, but actually are people you're going to see out on the water using a boat, out fishing and doing those things. And Dave certainly is one of them, that you're going to find him out and about on boats and using the products that we're going to be talking about. So that's key. Dave, talk about the brands of boats that you carry there at Townsend Marine.
You bet. Most people know us for our main bread and butter, which of course is the Lund fishing boats you've mentioned. And for good reason. We're one of the world's largest dealers. Lesser known is the fact that we sell Sanger towboats, Godfrey pontoons, G3 Jet John boats and pontoons, Hurricane deck boats, and also Yamaha Power Sports.
Okay. So you guys pretty much have everything you'd ever want to know about for boats.
Fairly diverse, yeah.
So tell me, if I came into you, Dave, and said, okay, Dave, I want to go fishing. That's all I'm going to use this boat for. Where would you take me for boats? What are some of the questions you would ask? How would you help guide us to find the right fishing boat for us?
Beyond budget, which is, most people's major consideration, my initial questions would be, what kind of fishing do you like to do? Do you like jigging, trolling, slip bobbers, pulling crankbaits, or like most of us, is it a little of everything? What lake or lakes do you like to fish? Do you go larger water like Fort Peck or Flathead? How many people do you normally expect to have in your boat? By the time we get out to the lot, I generally know which model I want to show them, which is helpful. As anyone who's shopped here knows, this time of year we keep them fully wrapped and protected, and it takes a minute to uncover them.
Okay. Captain, you got a few questions on that topic there?
Well, the one thing I'd like to point out is I do know that there's some real prominent fishing outfitters that rely on Townsend Marine, and Dave might be able to rattle some of the names off to get them, on the water with their clients. And the service is a real big aspect of that. But the Lund fishing boat that they use, and just locally over there, you have the Johnsons, Kit and Trevor. They really rely on those Lund boats. And over here where I'm at Fort Peck, Eddie Mint from the Lake Ridge Lodging and Bait Shop relies on Townsend Marine. So that kind of tells you a little bit, Dave, how a geographical not difference, but the geographical area that you guys can cover and do cover with Townsend Marine, with those outfitters and with your customers as well.
Absolutely. And honestly, we sell them all over. I mean, we've sold boats to, just in the last couple of years, West Virginia, South Carolina, people come from all over,
And I would think, especially for the fisherman that says, gee, I want a really good fishing boat and that, seeing an outfitter, somebody that does this for a living using a boat, would that be a pretty good gauge to say,
it says something, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's for dang sure.
I can't imagine guy in West Virginia saying, well, I got to get the boat winterized. I'll be back in about 2 weeks, honey.
There's good instruction. Yeah.
yeah. That's a long way to go.
Their winterized a little easier than ours, I think.
So let's talk a little bit about going to a little broader approach. And this happens a lot. I've seen it a lot. I know when I was younger and my kids were younger, it was one of those things of, gee, I want to go fishing, but yeah, we also need a boat that can do other things. We want to be able to cruise around because that's what mom likes to do. We want to be able to, pull the kids on the tube and water ski. I mean, am I asking too much to try to do all that with one boat? What would you recommend in that case?
No, not at all. In fact, I have to mention, at this point, 80% of my Lund lineup nowadays is considered, a fish ski, which, basically you take a fishing boat and you add some jump seats and a ski pole, built-in ladder, and they work very well that way. And they're still a great fishing boat. That's why you see so many of them on the water. Other stuff, our pontoons are very popular. They play real nice. For people with more specific needs, such as surfing and skiing or wakeboarding, we have Sanger towboats.
Okay. So, but there, you can do all that. I'd probably not do the wake stuff, but with a Lund, you could pretty much do fishing and keep the family happy too, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. That's what we're getting at. Yeah. Which is definitely one of the reasons why they are our main bread and butter. They just work so well for this Northwest, this type of, lifestyle that we have here in Montana.
Mm-hmm. One of the top 5 Lund dealers in America. That's one heck of an award to have. And that means that you must be doing your job when it comes to selling Lund boats, because there's a lot of Lund dealers in America.
There's a lot of dealers, there's the internet, and I'd like to think it's because, we really concentrate on, doing a good job knowing our product and taking care of that guy that, has purchased from us, which, always comes back to you.
Okay. And while we're on the subject of Lund, Dave, let's talk about some of the different models and, where you kind of see, the different uses fitting in. So for a Lund, is there kind of a starter level type of a Lund, or what would you recommend there for someone that says, I'm just getting into boating. I don't have a big budget, but I really want a Lund.
Yeah, for us, and obviously it's a little bit different depending on where you live, but for us, where it start would be the angler sport family. They're going to be the walk-through windshield, 60 horse max power outboard, not for, a big body of water, but you can still put all the fishing, stuff on there, like onboard chargers and, nice fish finders and trolling motors. If a person's looking for a little more boat that's more of what people are buying these days, it does have some options of pulling people around and running over 30 miles an hour. The Rebel would be the series to look at. 90 horse four-stroke is the max power, which makes a really nice little boat, upper 30s, top speed, gets you there. Once we start getting into models where they have the jump seats and ski poles like we were talking about, then you're going to have your Adventures, which is going to have a nice rod locker between the windshield like the bigger boats, single live well. From there, you're going to have your impact models, which incidentally is our most popular line of boats. They build them in, 17, 18, and 20 foot with a 200. So there's one for about every budget. Big live wells, big rod locker, big Panamaxle trailers on the bigger models. They're just a heck of a boat. Then up into your crossovers and Thais, they're all going to have that same back end with those jump seats that I mentioned. Almost every model, at the higher end is coming with, because it just makes sense. So yeah, Lund, has a model for everybody. A lot of people think or say, yeah, they're a real nice boat, but they're expensive. But honestly, if you compare Lund to anything out there, especially if you're talking, I know it's an overused term, but apples to apples, where it's the same motor and we've got the same, fish finder and equipment on there, Lund's no more expensive than anything. It's just it's perception.
And so, if folks are listening when they're listening to the podcast here, townsendmarine.com is the website, and you can follow along a little bit on some of the boats that we'll be chatting about. But what's the difference when somebody comes in wanting a fiberglass boat versus the legacy aluminum?
So it's personal preference, for most people. Each has its advantage. Aluminum is generally lighter, easier to tow, maybe a little better to beach, although I'm not a fan of that personally. Most guys would agree because of the streamlined look and corners, fiberglass tends to clean up a little bit easier. I'd say it might be a little tougher when it comes to light dock scratches. You definitely have less bow movement in a fiberglass boat. Due to the extra weight, which some would argue that definitely helps with the ride. Like I say, the look of them, both very nice. Aluminum tends to have more of the drawers and, wild storage options. So that's an advantage with those two. Okay.
So really there's a lot of different factors to consider in there. Do you find that when people come in and choose either fiberglass or aluminum, is a lot just what they prefer, or do you really get into, okay, what are you going to be doing with it and all that? Do they perform differently quite a bit?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot more choices in the aluminum lineup as far as different ones. When you get to fiberglass stuff, you tend to be in the higher end in the bigger boats. And a lot of people would agree for bigger water where you're consistently running, 3-4 foot waves, a 21 foot aluminum Pro V rides great, but fiberglass, it's hard to get me to say fiberglass rides any better as far as the a Lund product goes, but boy, they're right there. But a Pro V is a Pro V for sure. But you're not going to get all the different layout options and the storage, the drawers and stuff like that in the aluminum. They're just amazing. When you open a drawer and there's 10 Plano boxes in there, it looks like the Ark of the Covenant on Indiana Jones when they open the thing up to me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you're exactly right. So, it can end up looking like that.
Right. Especially when those options first came out, 6-7 years ago in the big boy boats.
Well, let's talk a bit about options. One thing I'm noticing now, especially in the fishing side of things, is I'm seeing some people kind of getting away from even putting a kicker on. What is your advice there as far as, when do I need a kicker? Is the electric troller going to be enough for me? What do you think there?
Sure. Great question. For us, I'd say kickers are probably on, 50% of the fishing boats that I sell. And then you have another good percentage that eventually will put that on. Of course, those have, lots of options also. But I can tell you, once you've had one that has things like fuel injection and power trim, you're never going to go back to one of the more basic ones again. Reasons for installing a kicker would be if you troll consistently and don't want to put, hundreds of hours on your main engine. Another reason is, God forbid, you hit a big rock pile in the middle of Fort Peck and, to only notice that there is another boat to be seen in any direction, it's a bad feeling.
Yeah, that's not good. And I don't imagine that electric trolling motor is going to get you all the way down Fort Peck.
Well, you're praying for those batteries to last, and I've been there.
Say, Dave, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, one of the boats models I wanted to ask you about is the 2175 Pro V. There's a lot of talk out there that boat has the smoothest ride when it comes to rough waves of any boat. I'm talking about fiberglass or aluminum. Is that kind of what you hear? I know Eddie's got that model. Jason Mundell, who's an outfitter on Fort Peck, has that model. It's a real popular model.
It really is, and it's a fun argument to have. Being able to fish both of them. As far as their big aluminum and fiberglass, they're both amazing. But just something about those big aluminum Lunds. You see those guys that buy those, and there's just nothing else for them. The ride's great, the storage is great. It's definitely a little bit less behind the trailer, so loading and unloading is a little bit easier. You can get them in a little shallower stuff. They're a sweet boat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once the guys had a Pro V, there generally is no other model. They just buy bigger ones.
What about going with a jet? Now we're getting into the real specialized side of it. But again, I hear a lot of stuff about jet boats and prop. You never need a jet, or boy, if you're going to use the river at all, you got to have one. When do you tell people, you know what, you really should go with a jet, or nah, you don't need that? What kind of rule of thumb do you use there?
Well, I don't. I say everyone should have both. But I'm a boat salesman. That said, jets. They work great for shallow rivers, small lakes. In certain instances, bigger water, like late early season hunting or fishing. Lake conditions permitting, of course. I should add, this is a statement more specifically directed towards the outboard jets, like I sell here, not inboards.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
They certainly have their place. Not in 3-foot waves on Fort Peck, though.
Right. So really that's for the smaller water, you think?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And your boat line that you sell, that jet boat line, that G3, is very, very popular amongst the outdoor people, isn't it?
They're hard to keep in stock, but I can see why. They just work so well. We rig them out with trolling motors and good sonar, onboard chargers, all the good stuff. And they work. They have their times in a little bit bigger water too. Like say, you got to pick your battle, but up in the mouth of the river here at Canyon Ferry, they're pretty hard to beat. Springtime. So we sell a lot of them.
Rigger, one of the things that we want to point out to folks is that we're real fortunate to have some great businesses that also help us bring the podcast, this Montana Outdoor Podcast.
We wouldn't even be able to do this if it wasn't for those folks. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things, we'll just take a little pause with Dave right now, and we'll come back and talk about Townsend Marine in a minute. But I tell you what, the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, they are a great place to go get CM truck beds and Diamond C trailers and accessories. I mean, it's a family-owned business, and they're in Missoula, but just like Townsend Marine, they do business throughout western Montana and actually central part of Montana along with eastern Montana.
Well, in Montana, especially if you're an outdoors person, you're going to, at some point in your life, you're going to end up needing a trailer. I mean, let's face it, we're hauling all kinds of things. We're putting our side-by-sides on there. We're doing this, we're doing that. And the key there, I feel, is you want to go to somebody that knows what the heck they're talking about with trailers. You don't want to just go buy something that's been sitting out somewhere or put it together yourself. Get somebody that knows what they're doing so you have a carefree time out having fun.
If you're not really considered a Montanan if you don't have a trailer.
Yeah, you got to have it.
Of some sort. I mean, and a lot of guys like myself have 4 or 5 different types of trailers, and you got a little lot that you put the trailers on. So, and of course, Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, I mean, it's in their name. They have their business name is Trailer. Their website is rmtte.com. So check them out on the web, or you can actually go down there in Missoula at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer.
Very good. Now, back to Dave with Townsend Marine. Dave, let's talk a bit about choosing horsepower. I know that when we pick a boat, after having a good discussion with you, we've kind of narrowed it down. Well, there are different horsepowers that could go on the same boat. How do you guide someone to pick the right horsepower for them? What do you recommend there?
For us, it's a no-brainer. Go max power or very close, and you'll never look back except for when you're looking at the guy, who didn't. In most cases, the boat will perform, as designed, and many more times economical than the same boat with a smaller motor at the same speed. Most people don't realize with fuel injection, in Montana, due to our different elevations, it still affects how they run, which is all the more reason to max that baby out.
Mm-hmm. Is there a big difference as far as the amount of fuel you use between the various horsepowers, or are you really not going to burn a whole ton more going max power, or what do you see there?
Well, so I'm not going to say that a 90 and a 300 have the
well,
same,
yeah, true.
have the same requirements in that respect. But one thing that a lot of people don't think of is if you say take an 18-foot boat rated for a 150 and it's only got a 115. Okay, yeah, it'll max out at upper 30s, which most people would say. Well, for a lot of people that's okay, but you were pushing that motor hard to do it. It's going to be wide open. Whereas if you put the 150 or 175 on that boat, now mid 30s has become a cruising speed, and absolutely you're going to use less fuel, and it's also going to be a lot easier on the motor. Like I say, there's not many arguments for not going max power or real dang close on a boat.
I like when Dave said, yeah, you always choose the max power because when you do, you look back at the guy that didn't when you're on the water.
Literally, you look back at him.
Yeah, you're looking right back at him. The other thing that Townsend Marine has the ability to do, they are a Yamaha outboard dealer as well as a Mercury outboard dealer. The G3s come equipped with the Yamaha. Yamaha and Mercury, they're top of the line industry leaders. In fact, I think if you look at boats in Montana now, it's either a Yamaha or it's a Mercury. Isn't that right, Dave?
I think, for the most part, with a few exceptions, yeah, they definitely have, the market kind of cornered. And that's another thing to consider, you might find a certain brand that you read nice stuff about on the internet and, that really hasn't pioneered this market, but, who's going to work on it if you do have trouble, which is something a lot of people don't think of until, after the fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And while we're on that topic, let's talk a bit about your service department and service. I think that's one of the key things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, I think that's one of the key things when you consider who you're going to buy a boat from. Because the last thing you want to do is you run into something, you say, that I need to get that fixed. I mean, let's face it, in Montana, our season isn't super long, and you don't want to have your boat in the shop. You want to be able to get it in and out. Talk about how you guys approach that with if I buy a boat from you. How does that work as far as getting it serviced?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, previously, we are one of the world's largest Lund dealers. We do it out of Little Townsend, Montana. I'd like to think it's because we know our product better than almost anyone else anywhere. And the fact that service after the sale has always been so huge for us. I mean, we win CSI awards almost perpetually from our OEMs. I have the plaques to prove it. We've won the Lund President's Award previously. We're the only dealer in the state with an actual test tank on site big enough to fully float or not only one, but two boats. My parts people are great. My parts guy, Josh, he was my head mechanic and rigger for longer than I was in the shop. So if it's something we specialize, you won't find anyone more knowledgeable, especially with high-end electronics. And again, another thing about us that really shouldn't be unique is the fact that Townsend Marine will always prioritize that person who bought that unit here, which can be tough. As sometimes our shop, which is well known for quality work, we can book out literally multiple months in advance. And sometimes, unfortunately, we can't take new customers, which sucks because we definitely appreciate and empathize with any customer who takes the time to walk through our door, if he's having issues. But it doesn't suck if you bought it from us.
There you go.
And one of the things that I'd like to point out, we mentioned it earlier in the podcast, Dave came from the back room where they work on the boats. Then he became the service manager. I believe he said he was that for 10 years. And I know when you talk to Dave, and I have done this, gotten on the phone with him, because he's been in the service department, because he's had that background, he can usually help you out sometimes on the phone when, it's something that you can actually probably take care of on the water itself. Do you get a lot of calls like that, Dave?
I do. Obviously, I've worked my way up the ladder. And so I have, very capable service guys, but, especially people who, bought directly, from us. I'm always there. It's for me, Mark anymore, it's fish finder questions and stuff like that. But, absolutely, that's huge. And I think lastly, anyone who's listening, who's bought from me can attest. My orientations are second to none. I mean, most are 3 to 4 hours. We talk about everything from break-in, servicing, trailering, safety, every boat function. And quite honestly, it's the only way I'm going to get you to, or you're going to get me to show you all the things that your two Humminbird Solix 12s with full Ethernet, Mega Live, and iPod Link are capable of. And when was the last time you bought something and were even shown how to run the remote? It just seems like the money that gets spent on stuff these days, you should get a little schooling, and here you do.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, nowadays the accessories on your boat, when you're talking about the Humminbirds and Mega Live and all that stuff, that can be as vital as the boat itself. And
it's half the orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many guys buy this stuff and have no idea what they're using, which is just terrible to see,
That's happened so often where, somebody gets out on the water and they say, hey, did you, you're asking them, did you see that? Well, actually, I don't know how to work that. So I think that's key.
My buddy told me I needed it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's key. You guys not only can sell it and get it installed, but you actually know how to operate it.
Yes, sir.
That's excellent.
Well, and one of the things that you want to make sure you don't have, and I'm talking to the folks that are listening to the podcast, you'd rather listen to Dave give you an orientation on something than have Downrigger Dale in your boat trying to fix something after it doesn't seem to work.
We've had those discussions out on the water a few times, haven't we, Captain?
Yes, we have.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, and I know that, do you guys like to take trade-ins? I suppose it depends on the boat.
Sure. Every deal is a little unique. obviously a person's always going to do, a little better selling it themselves. I mean, either I make a little extra money or you do, assuming you want to kick or deal with all the tire kickers. That said, another option we offer beyond trading is, if we've got a boat deal in place, I'll sell your used boat at whatever price you want for a very, very discounted rate, which gives consumers one more option than they're, generally used to.
Oh, okay. So, in other words, I say, time for me to get a new boat. What am I going to do with the one I have? You can sell that for me.
Potentially, we are somewhat picky on anything that we sell. So, unfortunately, if it's 40 years old, it's probably not the one for me.
Yeah, has 5 holes in it. Yeah, probably not.
You got to be a little careful because you do actually have to sell it to somebody. It's not like we can just ship these things off the auction and never see them again.
Mm-hmm. So really, as far as going with new as opposed to used, in your opinion, is that really more of a budget issue? Do you think?
I think it could be budget. It could be experience. I mean, obviously, if a guy's looking at boats and he's wondering, new versus used, I can tell you, the one thing is, especially for the person retiring, in a year or two, is that the new prices aren't going down next year. I can tell you that. So it depends on the guy's situation and honestly experience level. I mean, if they're totally green, I've never been in a boat, a used one is probably a good consideration. If they've, had some friends that they've been boating with a lot and be around them, it could be a different story. But yeah, I think there's certainly something to be said about getting dialed in on one that maybe has what we call a little character. The disadvantage, would be my first statement is that they're just going to keep going up in price.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as, let's talk financing here, because rarely can we walk in and just drop cash down for a Lund. And there are people that do, and good for them. But can you help with the financing and put that together? Or is that something I should kind of get organized with my bank before I come in?
Oh, absolutely. We have financing options no matter where you live. But honestly, unlike some dealerships, I have no hard feelings if you bring your own. We just want to sell you the boat. If we can make it easier, then that works great. Depending on where you live, I have, competitive rates. Again, local credit unions tend to be a good place to look.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how about for the first time boat buyer that one of the things, in fact, I actually had this discussion with a guy literally a few days ago, said, well, look, I'm retiring. And so I'm going to get my first boat finally. I'm going to stop and smell the roses. So should that guy go out looking for the boat he's always dreamed of, or do you recommend that they get into kind of a starter level first and then maybe go to the ultimate boat later?
I think honestly every situation is different. I mean, and I think that's where it's nice. You can talk to him and feel him out, and where he's going to use it and how he's going to get it there. It changes everything. And there's not one situation that's the same. And not to sidestep your question, but we definitely like to take it case by case. Give us a call and let's talk it out.
Okay.
So let's, when you talk about orientation, I want to go back to that for just a second. When they buy a boat, is it an option, Dave, where because your proximity is so close to Canyon Ferry, Townsend Marine's proximity, would you take them out in Canyon Ferry and just kind of show them when you're talking about the orientation? Here's how the electric troller works. Here's how Mega Live, if they have Mega Live on there.
Absolutely. We do all the time. I mean, the one thing about Canyon Ferry, it's weather permitting, and then it's level permitting. And most times by the time the ice comes off and they brought up the lake enough to be usable, they're well ready to have their boat. Other options would be Hauser Lake, especially if they're going north anyway. So yeah, right time of year, we're absolutely happy to take somebody to the lake.
Okay. Now, what about pontoon boats? Now, that's one that's kind of interesting that I'm seeing more nowadays out there of people actually fishing using pontoon boats. Talk a bit about pontoon boats and why that might be a good choice or not a good choice.
Yeah, pontoon boats are hugely popular right now and have been probably, for the past decade. We're especially excited about our Godfrey line. I mean, they're as nice as you find. There's tons of different layouts and customizations, similar to what you probably see in the camper world. They definitely make great family boats, cruise around boats, good play boats with the proper, equipped engine. And they make good fishing boats too, with the exception of what I would call kind of precision, casting in the wind. I mean, the right trolling motor can help immensely, but there's still a lot of boat getting pushed around by the wind out there.
Rigger, one more important part of this Montana Outdoor Podcast is another one of our marketing partners that help bring the podcast every week. We'll get back to Dave at Townsend Marine in just a sec. Is Superior Hardwoods of Montana, and I got a little story for you. They're
you want to talk about experts? Boy, do they know their stuff.
Yeah, they do a lot of reclaimed wood. I have a hardwood floor in my Lewistown place, and just love it. In fact, that's the first thing that people comment on when they come into the home is they go, "Who needs your floors?" Mm-hmm. That's if you want a unique floor, that's where you want to go. And, I was talking to John. It's John, Corey, and Shannon. I was talking to John, and I said, "John, I think I might have some reclaimed wood that you might want to buy. And I'll take a picture of it, and I'll text it to you." Well, I did that, and then I got schooled on what would really be a good place or a good wood for him to buy, what he would be in the market for to reclaim. And so that's the nice thing about John. He's been in the business for so long, and I won't make that mistake again, because the place that I showed him, he said the wood's not going to be very good, because when the roof goes, then the other wood goes. So they only buy top-notch, like Barnes, Corrals. If you have a Corral and you don't use it anymore, they're interested in possibly buying that wood. That's the Superior Hardwoods.
I'm glad you brought that up, because they actually are always looking for that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of you that listen to the podcast, you're farmers and ranchers out there. And before you just go torch that old barn or just tear down the corral and go out, there's a good possibility that Superior Hardwoods of Montana might want to buy that wood. So that's another reason. And where do they go to find them, Captain?
Well, they can go to Missoula, of course. They're off of Highway 93 South, right across from the Peak Fitness Center, which I know you don't know where that's at, down or they can go to superior-hardwoods.com, which is on the World Wide Web. And that website will show you how they guide you through the woods, Superior Hardwoods. Yeah. Back to Dave from Townsend Marine.
Yeah, Dave. So we were talking a bit about the pontoon boats. One of the things I was going to ask you about when we talk because Montana is very diverse with our waterways. We can, we have some great little small lakes, but then we also have huge lakes like Flathead Lake and Fort Peck. And in the case of Fort Peck, you can get some pretty good wind. Is that an issue with pontoon boats, or do they handle the bigger water and the wind okay?
The bigger ones, 22, 24 plus foot tri-tunes, with big horsepower, 200 and up, they're actually quite amazing in the big waves. Really? There's nothing to be scared of. Loading on the trailer, that's a different story. Obviously, in any boat that can be tricky. But no, they do rather well, actually.
So, Dave, we were talking about accessories, and that let's talk about what we can expect as far as when you go out and you get a boat from Townsend Marine, what comes with it, and what are things that you feel are the important things to add to our boat.
Obviously, there are a few more basic models, but short of most personal items like life jackets and throwable flotation, I mean, my fishing boats come ready to hit the water. I'm not going to ask you later if you want a spare tire or cover or fire extinguisher or even onboard charger. The stuff is there, meaning, when you call us, the first price you get is a realistic expectation of what it's going to cost to go boating. And that's just what's worked for us over the years. Early season, we can also custom configure models for the person wanting to make it their very own. But not a lot of little stuff unless it's personal effects is needed after you purchase from us. rod holders, transom saver, they're ready to go.
How about picking the right kicker? What do you recommend there? How do you take us through that? Because boy, that can get into all kinds of different size motors and everything.
Kickers, electric trolling motors. I mean, that's huge too. One thing I can say is, if you're buying, one from my lot, it's likely already going to have, say, an electric trolling motor in a good one, not just a cheapie. So we can say it's got one. As far as specific models and features, I'll be honest, I could take up your whole show explaining the differences and options, especially when it comes to the conversation that will likely include sonar too, which is all stuff that I'm happy to do, but, better in person or on the phone.
Find out exactly what they're kind of looking for, what they're going to use it for. Okay.
Yes, sir. Kickers are a little shorter conversation, but most guys with a fishing boat would prefer to have one forward controls, the power trim and electric start, like I mentioned before. Once again, fuel injection is an amazing thing on those little motors. No more of trying to, just having to hold your head right to get to start on cold mornings and stuff. So, things have gotten real nice these days.
Well, one of the things you might want to address, the type of electric trolling motor as far as the length, is when do you decide to do, say, a 60-inch shaft versus a 72-inch shaft? And, for example, I used to have 60-inch shafts on my boats. Now I go to 72, and it seems like that 72 is becoming more and more popular.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, any of our, higher end or bigger boats, Thais, Pro Vs, if it'll fit, we put as much trolling motor length on that thing as we can. Like say 72 inch in a lot of cases. It just keeps them from coming out of the water when you're in rougher conditions, which, as Mark knows, can be kind of annoying to listen to that thing coming in and out of there the whole time.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
That has become good. The sonar features and transducers options that are coming in these trolling motors are just so diverse. You can get side imaging and down imaging, and now we're attaching our you pick the brand, our live sight, to them. Things are getting pretty interesting the last couple of years, and we're somebody who gets to play with all the different brands and stuff like that. So we have some definite opinions that may not be fit for radio, but we're happy to help on a personal level.
Well, Dave, I want to thank you so much for the time that you've taken with us and helping us talk with our listeners here about picking the right boat, because it's an important choice to make. Captain, do you have something else you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know, and I'm sure they already do know, there's very few businesses that really the town is known for. And Townsend, obviously, it's got the name of Townsend in their name. Townsend Marine basically put Townsend, in my opinion, on the map. I know that dealership has been in business for a long time. I knew when they were across the highway, and, they had, I never saw, you really had to know how to park a boat over there, because their bullpen was not as big as they probably should have had. But then they bought it used to be a car dealership. They bought the facility across the street, and they've got a heck of a facility there. Not that the facility makes the dealership, but they grew into that facility because of the business that they do. I don't think I'm very off base on that. Am I, Dave?
No, sir. I mentioned how we keep the boats protected while on the lot previously, so I'd also like to mention, if there's any model the person would like to drive over and see, give us a call in advance, and we'll bring it inside and give you a private boat show. We can be reached by phone or have several links on my website that'll get you directly to us, of which we are constantly updating and tweaking our website for the best user experience, and love people's feedback. We try to put pictures of the actual units, weather permitting, depending on the time of year, and are happy to send build sheets and any other specific information a person would need. And with the exception of a few segments, our supply is more back to quote unquote normal. We have lots of new Lunds and pontoons to choose from, but also like normal, we're getting through our show season and we're selling through them. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for your time, and we'd love for you to come and see what we're about.
What's the best number to call if folks want to give you a call, Dave?
It's 1-800-598-5700.
And the website address?
TownsendMarine.com.
There you go. Dave is really this easy to talk to, too, folks. So I really encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast and you go, gee, I'd like to know more about this thing or that thing, just give Dave a call. He loves his boats. He loves to talk about them, and he knows everything about them. So I encourage all of you out there to spend some time on the website at townsendmarine.com. Browse around, get your questions listed, then give Dave a call and get your basic information, set an appointment, and then go down and, like you say, he'll put on a boat show just for you. So, great deal. Dave, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys again.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock, high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.